On this video, I'm going to dive back into the current housing market update that I have and some things that I learned from a previous video. I dug a lot deeper, found some trends that I think are going to be very helpful for the future of our projection of where the market's going and what we can expect coming out of this current recession on the back end of this and what we're going to see. All right, I am really excited to talk about this stuff today. I did a video based on the consumer sentiment report that University of Michigan puts out. And I looked back on my life, basically like late 70s, early 80s, all the way through now, and all the different recessions and different things that were happening in that chart to show you what it might mean right now, what we're seeing right now. Consumer sentiment is at an all-time low. The University of Michigan put out a report on that, and it's 1 month old even. It's the June update. It's at 50, which is an index. It is the lowest it has ever been in the period of time that I've been alive. That means through September 11th, through the COVID pandemic, through the crash, the Great Recession of 2008 and 2009, the mortgage crash, the late 80s or the early 80s when we had massive inflation, massive interest rates in the 14, 15%, just crazy stuff. It's at the lowest that it's ever been. Okay, there's a couple reasons for that, I think. I think it's the amount of technology, the technology that we have. The information can move very, very quickly. And so all of that stuff comes into our life. We process it so much faster and we feel like crap. The media is controlling our customers. They're controlling us and our customers. The good thing is we need to take that, use it, and figure out how we can use it for our business as a positive, and also how we can cut through the crap, okay? So that's one thing. Consumer sentiment, all-time low. I think we can all agree with that. People are freaking out, right? What I did was I looked at, it's very similar things that were happening in the recession in the early 80s and now. And so I dug really deep into that and wanted to look at that and talk about that today because I think there's some things that are going on. I think what the government's trying to do, what the Fed's trying to do, we can learn a lot from the early 80s. So just to remind you, in case you missed that video, in the late 70s, the housing prices were going up like crazy, kind of like they are right now. I'm going to show you a chart in a second. But the housing prices were going up like crazy. There were oil embargoes going on. So there was an Iranian oil embargo. So the price of oil was skyrocketing too, which caused like massive inflation. Inflation was going up. So the Fed put a raise on interest rates. So they started rising rates, increasing rates. Interest rates went way up, right? Housing prices going up, interest rates going up, inflation is high at like an all-time high. It's higher than it is right now. It sounds very familiar, doesn't it? Consumer sentiment was going down, just like it is now. And all of these things kind of came into play right there. And so what happened was the interest rates, and I mean interest rates, if you weren't around then or you don't know what was happening, double-digit interest rates, 15%, 16%, crazy interest rates, right? And so you would think that what that would do is it would start crashing the housing market. I mean, that's kind of what we're taught. Inflation goes up, Fed raises rates, rates go crazy, really high. If the rates were at 14 or 15% today, that may crash the housing market. It actually may. At that time, you would think the housing prices would have a massive decrease, like almost immediately as it started happening. I'm going to show you that that wasn't the case. In fact, housing prices went up during that time. That led me to kind of like dive a little deeper to figure out what was going on. When I went back, I started thinking about where I was at that time. I was a baby, just being born. I'm the oldest in my family, and my parents are baby boomers, right? I don't know how old you are or what your parents are, but my parents' generation were the baby boomers. And there are a ton of them. And the interesting thing right now, I've talked about a lot, is the baby boomers are hitting retirement age right now. But at that time, they were first-time and potentially second-time home buyers. So the baby boomers were first-time home buyers in those early 80s. They're buying their first house at 14, 15% interest. I remember my parents bought a house in San Diego. It was so interesting. The houses were really close together and really expensive. Similar demographics to what we have now. All the millennials right now are getting to first-time, maybe second-time home buyers, but typically around first-time home buyers. So a ton of baby boomers, a ton of millennials, and so these are first-time home buyers. Pretty much demand is crushing us, right? We don't have the supply. Demand is really high. And the baby boomers were driving demand, just like the millennials are driving demand right now, and potentially some other first-time homebuyers or second-time homebuyers are driving demand. And we have basically a housing shortage. And so it drives the price up. Interest rates start getting ticked up. The Fed starts trying to take advantage of this to tamp down inflation and make an adjustment. And housing prices start kind of cooling off or decreasing theoretically, right? And that's kind of what we're expecting to happen here. However, in the 1980s, all that stuff was happening and housing prices didn't decline. They slowed, and they slowed to a point where they weren't going crazy. And then they almost declined, and then it started going up again. So I'm going to show you this in a second. So let me show you this chart. It's Case-Shiller National Index. So the Case-Shiller National Index is widely what people use based on housing prices across all markets. And then it's an index. So what this chart that I'm showing you right here is a year-over-year change in prices. So a delta. So don't think that this line going down right here is housing prices decreasing. This is a change in housing prices. If it was 0, then year over year, the housing prices would stay the same. Okay? Hopefully that makes sense to you. You can see right here, it's a very clear line. 2007, 2008, we see decline, 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 and then they start coming back up in January. We're still losing year over year. This is still a losing year over year until we come out of that in about 2012. Probably March, April 2012, housing prices year over year start increasing, okay? So even though it looks like this chart is going up here, these were housing price drops for a 5-year period. Over 5 years, housing prices were going down, okay, on the national index. And so what you can see here in the late 70s, you can see, boom, prices are going crazy, right? Until like mid 1979, and then we start getting the Fed coming in and inflation's rising, and they're starting to try to tamp down inflation, rising interest rates. Interest rates are crazy still. We go into this depression right here, recession, sorry, not depression, recession. And right here, we start seeing what appears to be housing prices decreasing, but they're not. They're still going up. They're just not going up at the same rate. So if you can imagine this, we have housing prices going up year over year at 15%, then 12%, then 8%, then 6%. Like, these are compounding on each other, right? So if your house is worth $100,000 in 1979, and then in 1980, they go up 13%. Now your house is worth $113,000. And then in 1981, it goes up 8%. Now your house is worth like $125,000. And then in 1982, we're in a recession, and your house is going up 3%. It's worth like $130,000. It's still increasing, right? And at the back end of this, at this recession, it basically hits 0 and then starts going up again. So a year over year, you had basically a stagnation year over year, and then started going up again. So it was interesting for me to see this, because most people go immediately right now to this in 2008, 5 years of housing price decline. So I don't think that's what we're going to see here. I think what we're going to see here is housing prices start slowing, and that's kind of what we've seen right now. We've seen prices, what appears, people think it's like a decline in price and value, but it's not. It's not going and starting to come down. It's like this. We're getting to the top here. So if you look right here, this is basically right here is 2020 right here. We see this crazy spike right here, right? And so this little area right here denotes this recession, right? So this is a little period of COVID. You can see this kind of just and then boom, we're going to start increasing up here. And now we're seeing 20%, like 20%, double-digit increases for the past few years in pricing. And likely what's going to happen is it doesn't just go like this, straight down, right? We're going to start seeing potentially this come this way. And so we talked about this in our our April event in our mastermind. We talked about this, how we're going to see housing prices start slowing down and probably increases in the single digits this year, year over year. So I'll be interested to see what 2022 looks like once this Case-Shiller National Index is done every single year. But I think what's going to happen is we're going to see prices in the single digits, and then we'll see what happens after that. So it could slow, it could go down and decline and crash, but we'll watch it. But I think it's going to look more like this. Like, I really think that this is a very good and very interesting 1980, 1982 to see what's going to happen here. The problem is information flies a lot faster. So you can see these spikes happen quicker here as we start getting more technology and more communication going through. So that's the problem. That's the wild card in all this, is the consumer sentiment, the speed of information, how people believe the media, the news, the government, all these things that are happening right now. information moves really fast, and rumors and things that are not true can spread very quickly in this environment. So that's kind of the wild card. The human element is very difficult to predict, and really we control a lot of the outcome of this. So if sellers are starting to really drop their prices and fire selling their stuff, but I think there's one thing that we really should look at here, and I think it's the thing that will give us the answer all the time. It will always give us the answer, and that is inventory. So housing inventory is going to give us the answer through all of this, in my opinion. So what we're going to see is as we start seeing how, like, the number of houses on market, because we have this high demand still, but we don't have the supply. So what's happening with rising interest rates is tamps down the demand a little bit. It starts to like slow the demand, but people still need a place to live. And so their options are rent or buy. So as interest rates rise 1%, affordability drops by 11%. So if they keep raising interest rates, affordability starts going down, and the people that would qualify for a $500,000 house, as an example, might only qualify for a $350,000 house. So then they're looking at something they might not really want to be in. However, once those people start realizing that's what they can afford, then that's what they're going to buy. So we're going to see this waterfall effect coming down in pricing of what people are buying and what they can afford, and they're going to keep coming down. So if you're in the very peak of of your area, right, at the very high end of the market, you're going to see those people start waterfalling down to other investments, other properties, other houses. So for us, I want to be in that first and second time home buyer. I'm going to keep saying it over and over and over again. I want to be in that median home price area where I have the most potential buyers. Because if 50% of them leave, I still have a ton left. If I had 4 potential buyers and 50% of them leave, and then more houses come on the market and I have 10 options and only 2 buyers, those aren't good odds for me. But if I have 100 houses and I have 500 buyers, then they're going to buy mine. It's just a matter of how much they're going to pay for it. I think right now, the number one thing that we're going to see is the same thing that we saw in the 80s. It is unemployment. I really think what's going to happen from this is the Fed is going to continue to raise some rates. It's going to increase interest rates, but it's going to hurt businesses. It's going to scare people. They're going to stop spending money. It might not affect the housing market the way that we think it's going to, with massive increase in interest rates being a problem and housing prices going way down and crashing like this over in 2008, 2009. But I think it starts to look more like the 80s. That's my feeling. And I think it'll be more drastic. I think it'll be faster because of the speed of information. But I think we have some time on the back end of this. Start slowing down, start figuring it out, pick up the pieces, figure out what we're going to do. What does our business look like? But I think businesses are going to go out. People are going to have to start laying off employees because they're not going to spend as much money. They're not going to go out there, and it's already happening. The consumer sentiment is very low. People are not just, they're a little bit tighter with their money. And when that starts happening, businesses start to struggle. And then there's a domino effect. We start seeing unemployment. Unemployment was at a peak, 10.7% in 1982. So 10.7% unemployment in 1982, which is on the back of this recession right here. Unemployment was very, very high. And I think that's what we're going to see. I think the Fed is going to start, I think their actual purpose is to hurt businesses right now. I don't think they're going after the housing market. I think they're going after the businesses. Hurt businesses, push people out, more unemployment. And then what we're going to see is that is how typically we go into these recessions. We see unemployment, and then that increases our drop in GDPs. People start spending less money, all that stuff. And it just kind of balances the economy back again. So that's my prediction. I think we slow a little bit and kind of stall the housing market. Eventually it will start coming down probably. I think it's at a more rapid pace than the 80s, but unemployment is going to start ticking up significantly. People are going to start laying off employees. That's going to cause a domino effect for other things happening. And then there's going to be that kind of the wild card of the human element. So hopefully you guys found this valuable. I love these charts, this data, this kind of thing. And when I went back and I looked at late 70s, early 80s, it just showed so many signs of what's happening right now. And I don't really think a lot of people are talking about that right now. Everybody's comparing it to 2008, 2009, other crashes, these kind of things, recessions. But I really don't see that. That was caused by something totally different. The recession in the early 1980s, it was caused by very similar things. And while it will not be the exact same, for sure, I would not take this and say, oh, let me plan and prep for this kind of drop. I think the speed of information, the way things move so fast right now, it's going to move a lot quicker than that. So, but I do think it's going to look similar to that. And I think we're going to end up with this high unemployment on the back end. So that's my prediction. I have a couple cracks in my crystal ball. but hopefully that's incredibly helpful for you guys. If you guys like this stuff, you want to see more of it, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment. Tell me what you guys think. What do you think is going to happen? What do you want to see on another video? Do you want me to keep doing these market updates? Let me know in the comments, subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Bye.